My father transferred the $1.8 million enterprise I created to my incompetent brother because he has children, so I delivered a conclusion they'd lament indefinitely. I, a 33-year-old man, set the scene. My dad, Antonio, is 65, a traditional Italian fellow who's been toiling in landscaping since before my birth. Imagine the quintessential working-class guy, with perpetual grime beneath his nails, always carrying the scent of freshly cut grass, and able to maneuver an excavator as if it were part of him. From the moment I could toddle, I was captivated by working alongside him. While other kids played video games, I was studying soil chemistry and irrigation setups like a pint-sized landscaping savant. My older brother, Vincent, however, was the polar opposite. At 39, he spent our childhood treating manual labor as degrading. He refused to help with basic chores at home, claiming it would tarnish his reputation among his elite prep school peers. He'd tell his buddies our dad was a landscape designer to avoid admitting he got his hands dirty for a living. But here's where it gets compelling. When Vincent was 15, he was involved in a severe car crash. A drunk driver slammed into him as he returned from a party. He spent 3 months hospitalized with a broken leg and internal injuries, with doctors uncertain if he'd regain normal mobility, leaving our family terrified. During those weeks of recovery, guess who became his unwavering supporter? That's right, Dad spent every spare moment at the hospital, bringing Vincent's favorite meals, assisting with therapy, and being the ultimate father figure. The defining moment came one night when Vincent suffered a panic attack, fearing he'd never walk properly again. Dad stayed until 4 a.m., holding his hand and reassuring him everything would be fine. I was just 9, but I recall Mom weeping in the kitchen the next morning, telling me how Dad had never shown such tenderness before. That vulnerability from Vincent unlocked something in Dad that never shut again. From then on, Vincent could do no wrong in his eyes. They forged a bond during that ordeal, and it seemed unbreakable. Even when Vincent recovered and resumed treating Dad's work as beneath him, Dad still saw him as flawless. I realized early I was always competing for second place in this family dynamic. Take the time in high school when I made varsity wrestling as a sophomore, a big deal since our school's program was renowned. When I shared the news, Mom was thrilled, but Dad gave a distracted, "Nice job, son," while glued to his phone. My first major match was on a Saturday night, and I was eager to have my family there cheering me on. Mom was working a double shift at the nursing home, so I relied on Dad to show up. But when I asked, he got evasive, saying he'd promised to help Vincent move into his college dorm. Mom wasn't having it. She told him Vincent's move could wait a day, that this was important. Dad grudgingly agreed, but the night before the match, Vincent pulled his usual manipulative tricks, talking about his Independence Day and needing Dad's truck for his furniture, framing it as their father-son bonding time. Dad caved like a flimsy tent in a storm, so there I was, getting pummeled by a brute from the rival school, scanning the stands for Dad's face. He wasn't there. The worst part wasn't losing the match. It was that fleeting moment between rounds when I looked up, expecting his support, only to see empty seats where my family should have been. My coach noticed and patted my shoulder, saying, "Sometimes you fight solo, kid." That hit harder than any opponent's move. I texted Mom afterward and she called immediately, thinking something was wrong. Nope. Dad was at State University playing moving man for Vincent. I came home to find my parents in a shouting match that could have raised the dead. Mom was livid, demanding where he'd been. Then Vincent strolled in with pizza and drinks, looking unfazed by the chaos he'd caused. When Mom called him out, he shrugged and said, "His wrestling thing wasn't a big deal anyway." The gall of that guy still infuriates me. There I was, 16, humiliated in front of half the school, and my brother dismissed it like I'd lost a trivia game. I remember thinking, this is my family, and Dad, instead of apologizing, defended him, saying it was just a high school match and there'd be others. Vincent, he said, needed support for his big life transition. It felt like a punch to the gut. My own father was brushing off something I'd worked so hard for like it was trivial. I forced a smile and said it was fine, that I got it. Then I went to my room and smashed a hole in the wall. Mom found me icing my knuckles later and just held me without words. Sometimes that's all you need, someone who understands how messed up things are without needing to spell it out. This pattern persisted for years. Dad would make half-hearted efforts to treat us fairly after Mom chewed him out, but he always slid back to favoring Vincent. After high school, I enrolled in community college for landscape design and horticulture while Vincent attended a prestigious 4-year university. When I graduated, I joined Dad's business at 23, brimming with energy and bold ideas to transform his small operation into something significant. When I started, Dad had 3 guys with rickety trucks handling basic lawn care for about 40 clients. But I had ambition. I got us certified for commercial irrigation, began bidding on public contracts, and reached out to property management firms and upscale residential developers. Let me introduce 2 key players in this story. First, Big Mike Torino, a towering 6'4" foreman who'd worked for Dad since I was in middle school. Mike could install intricate irrigation systems blindfolded and had a knack for telling clients the unfiltered truth, even if it stung. He became like a second father, teaching me heavy equipment operation and crew management. He had a no-nonsense way of cutting through nonsense. When clients tried to alter project scopes mid-job or contractors lowballed us, Mike would stare them down and say, "That's not how this goes, boss." Second is Danny Castellano, a brilliant engineer who left his corporate gig to design landscapes. We met when he hired us for a project, but became partners after I convinced Dad to bring him on full-time. Danny created outdoor spaces that looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. Within 2 years of joining, we'd multiplied our client base 5-fold and started securing contracts Dad never would have considered. I'll never forget our first big commercial win, a $180,000 landscape overhaul for Meridian Business Park. Dad thought I was nuts for bidding so high, but I knew our work's value. We finished that job 2 weeks early and $15,000 under budget, and the property manager called it the most professional operation he'd ever seen. That led to 5 more properties in their portfolio. Over the next 10 years, I poured my heart into turning Dad's small lawn service into a legitimate landscaping empire. We grew from $120,000 in yearly revenue to nearly $1.8 million last year. We now employ 35 people, operate 18 trucks, and hold contracts with half the county's office parks. Our residential division handles full outdoor renovations costing more than most people's vehicles. While Dad still enjoyed getting his hands dirty on smaller jobs, I managed everything else. Bidding contracts, overseeing crews, handling permits, marketing, finances, and equipment upkeep. I was clocking 70-hour weeks between job sites and the office. This business became my life's passion, my entire future. The wild part was seeing how other contractors began treating us differently. At industry events, guys who once ignored Dad now wanted our secrets. Our equipment lasted longer, our crews were reliable, and our client retention was over 90%. I created systems for everything: maintenance schedules, quality control protocols, client follow-ups, things that seemed obvious but weren't industry norms. But what I didn't know was that Vincent was playing a different game. Every few months, he'd drop by the office during visits home, making a show of praising my work. "Enzo, this is amazing," he'd say in front of Dad. "You've turned this into something extraordinary." Dad's fortunate to have someone so committed. But Mom later told me she overheard him talking privately with Dad at a family barbecue. "Enzo's doing great," Vincent said, "but I'm concerned about his leadership capacity. He's a stellar worker, but running a business demands strategic vision, not just technical know-how. When you retire, you need someone with real management experience." He was two-faced, boosting my ego publicly while undermining my credibility behind my back. It was maddening how he threw around buzzwords like synergy and optimization without grasping their meaning in landscaping. He thought managing spreadsheets was like leading crews in 95-degree heat with heavy machinery. He didn't understand that our success came from years of building trust by showing up on time and solving problems before they escalated. Big Mike always had my back, telling everyone I was the mastermind. "Antonio built a lawn service," he'd say, "but Enzo built a damn empire." Danny designed stunning landscapes but always credited me as the one who made it happen. Yet when you build something great, someone's always waiting to snatch it away. Last year, things unraveled when Dad filed for divorce from Mom. Their arguments had escalated, mostly over money and Dad's obsession with living young, and their marriage finally collapsed. It was rough on the family, but I saw it coming. What I didn't expect was Dad diving into the dating scene like a middle-aged Casanova. Picture a 65-year-old acting like a landscaping tycoon, chasing women young enough to be his daughters. Each girlfriend seemed more interested in his newfound wealth than in him. The transformation was cringeworthy. Dad started wearing designer outfits, got his teeth whitened, and bought a Corvette like he was in a full-blown crisis. Big Mike started joking about it. "Your old man's having a midlife crisis at 65, he'd say while we loaded equipment. "That's not midlife, that's end-of-life crisis." Even Danny noticed, commenting on Dad showing up to sites in flashy clothes, talking about upgrading his lifestyle. What infuriated me was seeing him discard 35 years of marriage for this fantasy. Mom had worked tirelessly to support his dreams when he was just a guy with a truck and a mower. She'd managed the books, answered late-night calls, and helped with payroll during lean times. Now that the business was thriving, he was casting her aside like she'd been a burden. 5 months ago, Dad summoned Vincent and me for a critical family meeting at his new condo, a pretentious glass and steel place that screamed nouveau rich. The mood was tense from the start. Dad cleared his throat and dropped the first bombshell. "I have big news. Stephanie and I tied the knot last weekend." Vincent and I exchanged stunned looks. Stephanie was his latest fling, a 29-year-old former fitness influencer who'd been charming Dad for 6 months. "With all this success, you deserve to enjoy life, and it's too short to settle," he said. "You got married without telling us?" I asked, reeling from the news. Dad got defensive. "We wanted it private. You know Stephanie's not into crowds or drama." Yeah, I knew Stephanie. She was calculating, but Dad was too smitten to see past her superficial charm. She'd never held a real job, spending her days posting workout videos and peddling supplements to desperate housewives. She'd pegged lonely, wealthy, divorced men as easy marks. I'd met her twice, and both times she probed about the business's finances while feigning interest in landscaping. Warning signs were everywhere, but Dad was too infatuated to notice. That wasn't even the worst of his announcement. "I've also been thinking about the business's future," he said, adopting a serious tone. My heart raced. After a decade of building the company, I thought he'd discuss making me a full partner or transferring ownership since I was clearly running things. Instead, he dropped a devastating blow. "Enzo, since you're unmarried and childless, you won't inherit the business. I'm giving it entirely to Vincent." I couldn't breathe. Big Mike always said stress would give me a heart attack, but I never imagined it'd be from my father shattering my world. "What the hell?" I whispered. "Vincent has a family," Dad went on. "His wife, Jennifer, and their 3 kids need the stability, plus he can elevate the business with his corporate expertise." I stared, dumbfounded. "Dad, I built this company with you. I've devoted my entire adult life to it." "You can keep your current role under Vincent's leadership," he cut in. "But ownership goes to your brother. That's final. No debate, no recognition of my sacrifices, no acknowledgement of the systems and relationships I'd built, just a cold dismissal." I looked to Vincent, hoping for some sibling loyalty. Instead, he sat there with a smug grin like he'd been waiting for this moment forever. "Hey, Enzo," he said with fake empathy, "I know this is tough, but we can make it work. Your skills and my vision could take this to new heights." His patronizing tone made my blood boil. This guy, who'd avoided the business like it was a chore, was acting like he was doing me a favor by letting me work for him. "This is absolute nonsense," I said, my voice breaking. "I've given everything to this company. What about my future, my dreams?" Dad's reply was icy. "Life's not fair, Enzo. Family comes first, and Vincent has a family to support." Vincent leaned in with a fake sympathetic look. "Look, brother, I know you're upset, but running a business isn't just about the work. It's about strategy, finance, planning. Dad needs someone with proven management experience." This from a guy whose idea of planning was choosing his lunch order. I wanted to challenge him to name 3 pieces of our equipment or explain irrigation zones, but it was pointless. Dad had decided, likely influenced by his new wife who saw dollar signs in our financials. This wasn't just about the business. It was about a lifetime of being the less favored son, no matter my achievements. "Fine," I said quietly, standing, "if that's how you want it." I left that gaudy condo knowing I'd never return. As I reached my truck, I heard Vincent through the open window talking about helping me adjust to the new structure, like I was a troublesome employee, not the guy who built it all. The drive home was a haze of fury and betrayal. 10 years of my life wasted, building something incredible only to have it handed to my idle brother because he had kids. That night, I called Mom and spilled everything. She was as stunned as I was. "I never thought he'd do something this heartless," she said, her voice trembling with anger, "to give it all to Vincent instead of splitting it fairly." "I'd have been okay with 60 to 40, I said through clenched teeth, Or even 70-30 in his favor, but to cut me out completely after all I've done? Mom paused, then her voice grew firm. Maybe this is a silver lining. You've got 10 years of experience, incredible skills, and every contractor in the county respects you. Why not start your own company? Half those clients would follow you. Her words ignited something in me. If Dad thought he could discard me like old mulch, he was about to learn his mistake. I'd saved $125,000 over the years, living modestly and driving an old truck while reinvesting in the business. It was enough to launch my own venture. The next morning, I started making calls. First was Big Mike. "Mike, can we meet for coffee? I need to talk." When I explained, this giant of a man looked ready to punch a wall. "Those jerks," he growled. "After all you've done, you know what, Enzo? I'm done with them. If you're starting your own company, I'm with you." Next was Danny. His reaction was explosive. "Are you serious? Vincent couldn't design a garden bed to save his life. That business will tank without you. Count me in. When do we start?" Then I contacted our biggest clients, property managers, municipal contracts, high-end residential customers I'd brought in. I was up front. Dad was handing the business to Vincent, and I was starting my own. The response was overwhelming. Client after client pledged loyalty to me. They'd worked with me for years, trusted my crews, and knew I delivered on time and under budget. Most had never dealt with Vincent. "We work with you, not your father," said Tom Richardson, facilities manager for the county's largest office complex. "If you're going out on your own, we're with you. Vincent's nice, but he knows nothing about landscape management." The most gratifying call was with Patricia Wells from Grandview Properties, managing 8 properties worth $340,000 annually. When I explained, she was outraged for me. "That's outrageous," she said. "You've been our main contact for 4 years. You know our properties inside out, respond to emergencies at all hours, and your crews are top-notch. We're with you." Within a week, 70% of our commercial clients committed to me. These were relationships I'd built through years of early mornings, late nights, and flawless work. Word spread fast in the industry. Several top crew leaders quietly expressed interest in joining me, seeing the writing on the wall. With Vincent in charge and me gone, Dad's business was doomed to struggle. 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation. The call with Dad was explosive. "You can't abandon the business now," he yelled. "We have contracts, equipment payments, payroll." "I'm giving 2 weeks' notice," I said calmly. "More courtesy than you showed when you gave my life's work to someone who's never run a crew or operated equipment." "This is sabotage," Vincent shouted in the background, clearly on speaker. "This is business," I replied. "Good luck learning irrigation systems." Their desperation was almost satisfying. I felt a twinge of pity for Dad, but he'd made his choice. Big Mike resigned the same day. So did Danny, 4 top crew leaders, and 8 other employees. The exodus was swift and brutal. Starting Torino Landscape Solutions, named after Big Mike, was both terrifying and exhilarating. We found a prime shop space in an industrial park, larger than Dad's, better located, with room for all our equipment. Big Mike helped negotiate deals on used machinery from industry contacts. Danny designed a sleek office and a portfolio that outshone anything Dad's business ever produced. The clients who'd pledged to follow us kept their word. Within a month, we had a 6-month backlog of contracts. My phone buzzed constantly with new inquiries. Meanwhile, Dad's business was crumbling. Vincent had moved back, expecting to inherit a well-oiled machine. But he knew nothing about equipment maintenance, crew management, or client relationships. Luis Mendoza, a supplier, told me Vincent called him in a panic when 2 mowers broke down in a week, clueless that equipment needed regular upkeep beyond fueling. He asked if we could loan him a crew until he hired replacements, Luis said, laughing. I told him suppliers don't work that way. He seemed confused about the difference between equipment and labor. What I didn't anticipate was Vincent's shady financial moves. 2 months after I left, Maria Gonzalez, our former office manager who stayed out of loyalty to Dad, called, sounding stressed. "Enzo, can we meet for coffee? I can't talk about this over the phone." The next day, Maria looked drained at a downtown diner. She'd managed Dad's office for 6 years, handling invoices, payroll, and client communications. "Vincent's doing things that feel wrong," she whispered, checking for eavesdroppers. "He's inflating invoices way above our standard rates, calling it premium management services or strategic oversight fees." My stomach sank. "How much?" He added 30% to the Patterson job, $15,000 on a $50,000 contract. When I questioned it, he said it's normal for executive oversight. What else? Maria handed me a folder. He's issuing invoices for consulting from Strategic Landscape Solutions, LLC, registered to his home address, $2,500 monthly for operational consulting. He was paying himself fake fees from the business. There's more, she said. He's using the company card for personal expenses, fancy dinners, his kids' private school tuition, even a Disney World trip. He calls it client entertainment or strategic retreats. I was livid but stayed composed. Maria, why tell me? Because I care about your dad and this will destroy what he built. Vincent doesn't know I kept copies of everything. She slid the folder over. I can't stay much longer. My conscience won't allow it, but you should know what's happening to the business you helped create. I drove home with the folder burning a hole in my passenger seat. Part of me wanted to storm Dad's office and confront him. But Big Mike's wisdom echoed, when you take someone down, make sure they can't get up. That night, I laid out the evidence. It was damning. $95,000 in fraudulent invoice markups. $42,500 in fake consulting fees to Vincent's shell company. $31,000 in personal expenses on the company card, and payroll irregularities for overtime management duties. I called my lawyer, Jim Rodriguez, Monday morning. Jim, a 20-year commercial law veteran, reviewed the documents. Enzo, this is serious fraud, invoice inflation, self-dealing, misuse of funds. Vincent could face criminal and civil penalties. What's the best approach? Document everything, don't confront them, and let me handle the legal strategy. I'll recommend filing a complaint with the DA and notifying the IRS about his unreported income. Over the next few weeks, more evidence surfaced. Luis Mendoza called after hearing about my new business. Enzo, Vincent's demanding cash kickbacks for preferred vendor status, 10% of every invoice, $3,000 last month alone. I've paid because I need the work, but it feels wrong. Luis, an honest supplier of 8 years, had receipts and a recording of Vincent threatening to cancel contracts if he didn't pay. More fuel for the fire. The most damning evidence came from Sarah Kim, account manager at Westfield Properties, a major client who stayed with Dad's company. We need to discuss your father's billing, she said. She showed me invoices for executive site inspections and strategic vegetation analysis, 40% higher than Dad's usual rates. Vincent called them industry standard. Sarah, is the work quality matching these charges? She scoffed. It's awful, crews are late, equipment fails constantly, and no one seems competent. We're paying premium for subpar service. Would you file a complaint if needed? Absolutely. We're considering canceling our contracts. We've only stayed out of respect for your father. Meanwhile, my business was thriving, 28 employees, a 6-month backlog, and referrals pouring in. Danny's designs were featured in trade magazines, and we won 3 major municipal contracts. Dad's operation, however, was bleeding clients, losing crews, and suffering from Vincent's ignorance about equipment maintenance. In November, Jim filed our complaint with the DA, whose thorough evidence prompted an immediate investigation. 2 weeks later, the IRS got an anonymous tip about Vincent's unreported income and fraudulent expenses. In early December, Maria called. Enzo, I gave my notice. Vincent asked me to delete all financial records pre-July, saying they're clutter. I refused without Dad's written authorization. He got nervous. Vincent was trying to cover his tracks. Maria, one last favor, can you copy recent records before you leave? Already done. I've got everything through last week on a flash drive. This is my last act for your dad. Maybe he'll see Vincent's true colors. Christmas passed, spent with my girlfriend, Sarah, and her family, feeling hopeful about my future. My business was booming. I was planning to propose in spring, and I wasn't obsessing over Dad's company daily. That changed on January 15th when Jim called. Enzo, the DA executed search warrants on your father's business and Vincent's home this morning. They seized computers, records, and bank statements. Vincent was arrested for wire fraud, embezzlement, and false tax returns. The hammer had dropped. What about Dad? No charges yet. Evidence suggests Vincent acted alone and hid it from him. But the business faces civil penalties and client lawsuits. That evening, local news ran the story. Local business owner arrested for fraud, with Vincent's haggard mugshot. It detailed $275,000 in invoice fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Clients were planning lawsuits. Industry contacts called, shocked but not entirely surprised. 2 days later, Dad called, his voice shattered. Enzo, I owe you an apology. You and your mother were right. I should have valued what you built. I felt vindicated, but mostly sad for him. Vincent's facing 5 years in prison. My business is ruined and I can't repay the clients he cheated. And how does that involve me, Dad? I thought maybe you could. Maybe now you see what happens when you back the wrong son. Son, I'm so sorry. So what are your thoughts on this story? Do you agree with what happened, or do you see it differently? Let us know your opinion in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. See you in the next one.